Hello everyone, it's Whack Animotif here to show you what if Deku gained the anime system. Let's go ahead and get in this. Currently, Izuku Midoriya is in an isolated room. He's just turned 6. He's been diagnosed as quirkless at the age of 4. The thing is, apparently, everyone already knew this. Everyone in this facility. Izuku was thinking this before he heard a knock on his door. Immediately, when he heard that, he flinched out of his bed that he was in and tried to hide somewhere before the door busted open, and a man that had a scar on his left eye looked at him and said, "Oi, test subject 025, get up and follow me before we break every bone in your body and reassemble it, and then do many, many torturous experiments on you with electrocution." After all, that would be quite interesting, don't you agree? Izuku looked directly at the man, and his eyes were in pure insanity and pure enjoyment of Izuku's predicament. You see, Izuku has been, ever since he was diagnosed as quirkless, Ingo immediately gave him up to an orphanage. But that orphanage was not a normal orphanage. It was actually under a guise. Below the orphanage is a military base that does experiments on quirkless children specifically, trying to see if they can get them to have powers, or if they can make them into living soldiers or emotionless weapons. And that's what Izuku's been under for 2 years, and he's sick of it, but he can't do anything about it. Izuku immediately has to follow the man, either that or be beaten to a bloody pulp again. After all, he wants to get this over with so he can play with the rest of the kids, or see how they're doing, and take care of some of them. When he got here, all the kids that were here had emotionless eyes. They had despair in their face. Izuku wanted to be their hero. He wanted to protect them. He wanted to make them feel better. So he befriended all of them. He comforted them when they needed it. And he grew closer to them. But he's honestly very, very worried. Because right when he follows the man out of the room and into the dark hallway with one light blinking, the familiar hallway into the doctor's office, he starts to feel as if something's going to go off today. Right when they go into the doctor's office, they see the night guard of the area, well, the security guard. He's wearing all purple, and his name is, I believe they called him Afton, is what Izuku's thinking. He always ends up doing weird glances towards all the kids, and it's been unnerving him for a while. But right when he walked past Afton literally whispered, "I can't wait to stuff them in the animatronics and hear their screams." And this unnerved Izuku. He didn't know what he meant by that. But he didn't really have time to comprehend this, because while he wasn't walking anymore, the man behind him pushed him to the ground and said, "Keep on walking, you little shit." And then started to beat the absolute shit out of him by bashing him in the head, throwing him against the walls, and overall just beating him until he's almost unrecognizable, before picking him up and starting to drag him to the office. Right when he gets to the office door of the doctor, he knocks on the door and says, "Hey doc, your favorite test subject's here." Immediately, the doctor inside says, "Oh, goody!" And he starts having a mad laugh while walking towards the door out of his rolling chair, and opens the door and says, "Oh, Izuku, my darling test subject Izuku, I'm going to enjoy this. I made a new type of serum. If it works correctly, it should give someone the ability to, well, the ability to have enhanced strength, or overall to be able to cross through different dimensions. I don't know if it works or not, and I needed someone to test it on. I mean, there is about a 97% chance they'll explode, but hey, don't worry. If you end up getting killed, you're expendable. While he grabs Midoriya with an iron grip, while Midoriya starts to tear up after what the doctor just said, and starts to bash on him, starts to punch his chest, but the doctor doesn't mind. He just walks him all the way towards this test tube tank. And once Izuku saw this test tube tank that was full of liquid, green liquid, and a coffin in the middle of it, with needles all around the coffin, and little holes in the coffin, Izuku knew what was going to happen. He screamed and begged not to go in. But the doctor opened the tank. The water flooded it out slightly, and then he stuffed Izuku into the coffin. Right when he did, Izuku started trying to run out of the coffin, but he immediately closed it very quickly. His left finger got stuck into the coffin door, and he was screaming out in pain. And right when this was happening, some blood came out of him. And right when the blood touched the water, the green water, it started to change a little bit, turned slightly purple. The doctor was curious by this. He opened the door again and pushed Izuku's finger inside the coffin. And he was wondering what would happen if it mixed with human DNA. This is interesting. So all the liquid started filling up, and the only thing that all outside the coffin, and the little holes that were in the coffin started to flood in. But before they could, needles started to go all around the machine, poking into the holes in the coffin, getting closer and closer to Midoriya, while the doctor on the outside was operating the machine to do so. He said, "Hey, Midoriya, are you ready?" While Izuku said, "Anything but this, please, anything." While the doctor says, "I guess you're ready," and he starts doing a mad laugh before slamming down the switch, and all of these needles, 75 separate needles into all of his joints and different areas into his skin, start to penetrate through his skin. And right when it does, he starts screaming, and all the liquid starts to fill up all through the tank, and all the liquid starts to fill up in the coffin while being injected with the DNA, all the substance, this material that this doctor's been mutating through different experiments. All through his body is starting to change him. His body is starting to break down. His bones are starting to bend, break, and shatter, and reorganizing itself. His eyes are starting to turn slightly red, and his hair is starting to turn dark green slightly. And his screams are just echoing throughout the entire lab, throughout the halls. The room next door houses all the kids. And right when they heard Izuku scream, they started shuddering in terror. Then that the person that's comforting them, looking after them, that they see as a big brother, is going through this hellish experiment for them. Flashback. Izuku has just been sold by his mother. It was a horrible day for him. He's been dragged into a military car, and immediately all of the soldiers are looking at him like he's just trash. He's despicable. As if he just killed someone. Just because he had no quirk meant his entire existence was one of the worst sins, is how they treated him. That's how the looks were. And they started to unnerve Izuku. He tried to talk to some of them, but they didn't talk to him, or they just slapped the absolute shit out of him, causing him to hit the side of the wall, the steel wall inside the vehicle. And right when they reached to the base, or to the orphanage, is what Izuku thought it was, they grabbed him and had a tight grip on him, and immediately started to pull him out of the vehicle. They walked towards the orphanage, and he saw this elevator they're walking towards, and immediately saw all these kids around up top, having fun and everything. He thought it was going to be great until he was dragged towards the elevator, and immediately the guy who was grabbing him said, "No, this is for the people the kids that have quirks, that are unfortunate enough to have their parents either killed or just didn't want them. No, for your quirkless little shits. Only thing you deserve is downstairs with the doctor who experiments on all of you, making it to where you're miserable. existences are extinguished or put to better use as a soldier or cannon fodder, is what the guy says, and all these words are sinking into Midoriya, and he's processing this while he's being pulled into the elevator. And right when the elevator is descending, they start to drag him into a room and throw him into it. As soon as they're walking down the dark hallway, they turn to the left and open a door and throw Izuku in it and close it right behind him. Izuku's trying to run towards the door and starts banging, saying, no, let me out. The entire room's completely dark, and it smelled moldy, and it smelled as if someone was dying, or someone threw up. He looked around, and his eyes are starting to adjust to the dark. He sees 5 to 7 kids all around in the room. They're all very, very sleep deprived. Izuku could tell from the bags under their eyes. They're all in immense pain. And worst of all, they all look like they lost all hope in their eyes. They're crying. They're begging to be gone. They're begging to be out of here. Izuku walked towards them and saw their anguish. This one kid who's on the ground with long hair, her name is Jizoko. She immediately notices Izuku walking towards her, starts to flinch, and tries to back away. Izuku kneels down towards her and says, "Are you okay?" While she says, "No, I'm not. None of us are. We all were experimented on. It was so painful." And they start shaking, remembering, while Izuku just starts to do something unexpected to the girl. Pulls her closer towards her and hugs her. Right when she's doing this and said, "It's okay, let it all out," and starts petting her head. Right when this happens, all the kids look at this in slight envy, because no one's comforting them, but she's getting comfort. While Izuku says, "All of you, could you huddle around real quick?" They all walk towards Izuku, kind of hesitantly. Izuku pulls all of them into a hug. They all start crying into his shoulder, and they say, "It hurts so much." While Izuku said, "It must have," and he has a faint smile, saying, "Don't worry, I'll help you." They all start crying into his shoulder, and Izuku says, "I might have been abandoned by my mother, but doesn't mean I can't make a new family." He started treating them as family, and he managed to talk to the doctor and said he'll take their doses of experiments. If they don't experiment on them, he'll take their portion of it, so they won't have to go through this pain again. The kids try to stop him, but it was too late. Thus led to his predicament here, as he's screaming, and the kids are listening to this, all screaming in their heads, "It's our fault. He took on our part of the experiment. He's not going to survive. We barely survived them." As Izuku's in the tank, is about to pass out, all of a sudden he hears a voice in his head saying, "Anime system unlocked." Right when he hears that, he's thinking, "Anime like the shows I used to watch?" Before he could really further in this, he's passed out. The doctor finally stopped the experiment and dragged him out of the tank. Right when he does, he notices some differences. Izuku's hair is darker, his eyes are red and green mixed together. Half of his iris is green, and the outside of his iris is slightly green in his pupils. On the outside is completely white as usual. And immediately starts to drag the kid away and puts him back into the room with all the other kids. He picks him up and gently and runs to the room with all the kids and says, "Hey kids, your favorites little big brother's here. Your favorite brother's here." While he starts to literally show Izuku as if he was a prize and throws him in the corner of the room very far and says, "There you go. Isn't that much better? Now you guys can see your brother. See the agony he's in." And he does a sadistic smile. While Izuku is still asleep and unconscious, and all the kids are really worried because Izuku's been unconscious for about 2 days. But while Izuku's finally waking up, he wakes up and his cold bed, metal bed, with wrist restraints on still. Immediately he's thinking, what was that he heard before? But before he can dwell on that, a blue screen appears in front of him saying, anime system unlocked. Do you want to go somewhere else? Immediately, Izuku says, why would I want to go somewhere else? And the system says, because I can make you strong enough to save those kids. All you have to do is go to different anime universes that'll be selected randomly and do certain tasks, and you'll be rewarded. Izuku thinks, sure, I'll do it if it can help me save the kids. So a screen pops up, and mentally he says yes. And he says it out loud. Right when he does, a glow starts to go around his body. He starts depixelizing, and all the kids start walking in. Right when this is happening, they all run towards him and say, Izuku, don't leave. And Izuku says, I'm not leaving. I don't feel so well. And immediately they start thinking about the Endgame movie, and they're like, no, Mr. Izuku, while he starts fading away. The kids start laughing because they were reassured by Izuku that he was perfectly fine. So they didn't really see anything to contemplate on. Whenever Izuku said he's fine, he's fine. They learned that. They learned not to question it, at least. It helps them cope with stuff. So Izuku was sent into a different world. He just spawned into the darkness. And he closed his eyes one time and he opened them. And this world seemed familiar. He heard someone say, hey Luffy. Hey Saburo. Hey Ace. They heard this one man screaming out their names and saw 3 little kids walking towards this house in the woods, it seems. Izuku's wondering what in the hell is happening. Is this One Piece? Izuku saw some of One Piece, but not all of it. And that's where I'm going to end this. Hope you all enjoyed.